Hello, everybody. This is Coach Chance, and welcome back to Sky Oaks Online Chess Club. This is week number 4 of our normal lessons, and today I am going to show you a third very important checkmate to know. After you know this checkmate, you will know generally all of the checkmates that you will need to use in the end of a game where you've played pretty well and you have either gotten it down to where you just have a rook in your king versus their king, two rooks, a queen, some sort of queen or rook type piece. So it is possible to checkmate with a king and one rook, and we start exactly the same as we did when we had two rooks. We're going to make a line between the king and our king. Now, of course, the king is going to start chasing after our rook. That's completely fine. We're okay with that. And now notice that we don't have another piece this time to move that line back. So what we have to do is we have to try and get something called opposition. We have to force our opponent's king to move straight across from our king so that our king covers these three squares in front of him and we can move our rook back and force the line back. Remember, if our king is here and their king is here, we can cover those three squares and the king can't move forward. So we're going to start chasing down this king. And the enemy king is going to go ahead and attack our rook. Again, completely fine. Just like in the two rooks checkmate, we'll just move the rook over to the other side of the board. Of course, the king is going to go and start chasing down the rook again. And so remember that we want to force the king into going across from us, which means that if we go here across from the king, he just runs away. So what we want to do is we want to get in the way of the king here. So you want to be one space between where the king is and the rook is. So you want your king to be in between the king and that rook. And that will force the king on the enemy side to either go here and give us opposition like we want. And if he goes here, then we slide our rook back and we do it all again. If he goes here, we're just going to keep on forcing him, right? Keep on forcing him into the corner, and eventually he has to go back into that opposition. And then we use check. And then in this case, we can go ahead and follow. And once this reaches the other side, notice that I went across from the king this time, because when he finally gets down to the rook, you'll be moving that rook, and he will be forced to move back into that opposition, or he'll keep running, but he will eventually be forced to move back into that opposition. So again, once he moves back, feel free to move directly across from him, because eventually he will have to move into opposition like this. If he moves straight back, like this, then you don't have to move straight there. We can always just cut him off. He's got either there or there. And checkmate. So I'll show you guys that one again. And we'll go ahead and reset here. So again, we start by drawing that line. And then our goal is to get opposition. And so we want to cut off the king here so that he can't move there. So that he can't move towards the rook without getting checked. If he does, we move there. He should continue to move towards the rook. If he does, we go across. If he doesn't, we cut off the king again. Like so. We can go ahead and cut off the king again if he does that. But more than likely, he'll chase after the rook. Then you go straight across from him. He's going to go ahead and attack the rook. That's fine. We just continue to block the king from moving towards the rook. And that's check. And finally, he's chasing the rook all the way down the board. We'll slide on back over. And we checkmate. This can be done on either side of the board, so just quick set up a new position here where we have the king and the rook on the side of the board. It's not always going to happen that you have everything set up so that you can push the king back this way. Sometimes you'll have to push him back to the right. Sometimes you'll have to push him back to the left. But it's the same idea either way. You draw this line in between the two kings. The king comes after. And it's just the same except rotated 90 degrees. It's flipped sideways. Once the king goes in here, we check. He moves back. We move across from him except left and right this time instead of up and down. We chase him down here. He's forced to move to the corner or get checked again. And then we check. Just like every other time that we've done it. We'll move back. And remember, if he moves straight back, we can cut him off again. He's forced into the corner. And in this case, we'll chase the king all the way back down, just like every other time. And that is checkmate. So, now, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and try this. We're going to go ahead and move back. And we'll do it from a different position this time that you guys have not seen. Let's do it from the right side of the board. We'll put the rook here. We'll put the rook here. Or, sorry, king there and king there. Load that position up. And so, first, what is your first step? Pause now. All right, we go ahead and draw the line, right. Put a line with the rook in between the two kings. Now, what is your next step? Right, we want to start chasing down the king, just like a normal king and queen checkmate. Now we're going to want to bring the rook all the way back around. And now what is your next step? Right, we want to move king to f5 here, cutting off the king from moving towards the rook. If he does this, which we're going to say that he does in this case, what is your next move? Right, we just want to keep going ahead and checking down the board. He's going to move straight back. So what move should you do now? Right, he moved straight back. So we want to go ahead and cut him off. Since he didn't move towards the rook, we have this opportunity to stop him from moving towards the rook again. So let's say that you guys have a king chase all the way down this board. And now we go ahead and check. And now the king moves towards the rook. What is your next move? Right, we want to go ahead and move across from the king here. Now, I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrinkle into this game. What if, instead of moving towards the rook, the king moves away? What should you do now? So for those of you who figured this out, good work. What we're going to do now is called wasting a move. Right now, we have the kings in a position where if it was black's turn, he would be cornered. So what do? We make it be black's turn. We can just move the rook one up. And now, black is forced to either go here to b6 and go into opposition, or move away. And it's the same idea. And so now, we're going to try this waste a move again. and he's just going to run away, and we're just going to waste a move, and now he's stuck over on that side. I'll show that again here. If we're just chasing down and around, and we're chasing, if he ever gets to this side of you here, you can waste a move. Don't chase the king around, just waste a move. So we'll waste a move here, and the king is stuck, and checkmate. That is all for this lesson. If you want to watch this lesson again to get a better hold on the king and rook checkmate, I would say more power to you. Please do make sure that you know how to do this checkmate well, and make sure that you know how to do it so that you can do it every single time. There are going to be a lot of situations in which you end the game with a king and rook versus a king, and you really need to know how to checkmate with those two pieces versus a king. It is the most common draw that I see in younger kids that play chess because they just don't know how to checkmate with the king and rook. It's a fairly simple checkmate, and I hope you guys do well in learning it. Have a great week.